Hello and welcome to Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books, and other words too. I'm Lily.
And I'm Sarah.
And we like to start things off on a positive note. So Sarah, what's something great that happened this week?
My birthday was on the 11th.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I ate an excessive amount of oysters and drank a lot of vodka, and it was delightful.
That sounds like a wonderful birthday.
It was very good. I was very pleased. What is something good that happened for you last week?
It was going to be that my sunflowers sprouted, but now half of them are missing their leaves. Like maybe some kind of critter has also noticed that they sprouted.
So some kind of critter is also having a very good week.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think I have any particularly great thing. Actually, work's been going really good, but that's a weird thing to talk about on the podcast. So,
but it is a genuinely good thing.
Yeah. So there we go.
And what are you drinking tonight?
I am drinking vodka with limeade and a little bit of seltzer water because I do like those bubbles. How about you?
I am drinking something similar, only lemonade and no seltzer water because it's hot and I am dying.
Oh, it is hot and I'm loving it.
No, I'm not built for heat. I mean, I shouldn't complain because it's worse elsewhere, but it's too hot for my taste.
I also have to say my definition of what is a hot day has drastically changed since slowly working my way north over the last decade or so.
Fair.
But it hit 70 today, so I'm excited.
70 is still in my happy place. You get anything above that and I start to melt.
Yeah, I mean, I just sat out in the sun and sweated, and it was sticky and gross and the best thing ever.
That might count as your something good.
There you go. I do also live in a state that's just known for chronic vitamin D deficiency, so
yeah,
gotta get it where I can find it.
Exactly.
Well, other than our podcast books, have you read anything good lately?
Well, normally I have a list of books that I've read that I can talk about, but this time I've only been reading Wheel of Time, and we'll get into that later.
That's true. We have a whole section for that. Well, comparatively.
For a little while longer yet, anyway. Have you read anything good lately?
I have, actually. Well, I don't know if I'd call it good necessarily, but I read Aladdin and the Magic Lamp, the fairy tale that the Disney movie is based on.
Interesting.
Because we watched the live action Aladdin movie. And I just was full of so much, I don't want to say morbid curiosity. That movie was a situation.
You were full of Aladdin-related feelings?
Just curiosity, I think, more than feeling. The live-action movie wasn't as bad as I had been led to believe. I like that they gave character motivations for Jafar instead of him just, being a power-hungry maniac or whatever.
Him being a stereotypical Grand Vizier.
Exactly. And the way they handled the genie, I think, made a lot more sense. Instead of him wanting to be wished free so that he can just use magic however he wants, setting him free turns him human, which I just think works a lot better from a storytelling perspective.
I mean, I would rather be free so I can use magic however I want than be free to be human.
Right, but you have to be giving something up.
Do you?
From a storytelling perspective, it works better for him to have to sacrifice something for his freedom than to just, I don't know, have his cake and eat it too. And it also explains why Aladdin wouldn't want to set him free, or anyone wouldn't want to set him free. Because if he could just continue to use magic on his behalf forever, why not?
Yeah.
Whereas, okay, setting him free means you no longer have access to an all-powerful genie. I get it. That makes much more sense.
Yes, that does make more sense.
Anyway, so I was really curious about where this came from. I read a translation from the 1880s, so goodness knows I don't trust any of those academics farther than I could throw them.
Fair.
So it's probably still not really the story it's truly based on, but close enough. Very different, obviously. But there's two genies, which I did not know.
Oh, interesting.
And the whole story is just various people trying to marry the princess. And then there's like someone steals an entire castle at one point. Strange. Also, in the beginning, Aladdin is so lazy, his father dies of disappointment.
Oh my.
Like, that's just how it starts.
That seems to me that the Diana Wynne Jones book, Castle in the Air, probably takes a lot from Aladdin. It seems like they might have some similarities.
You know, I read that book so long ago, I cannot remember. Was that one of the Howl's Moving Castle ones?
That is the second one, I believe.
Okay. I don't remember a word of it, but sounds like it. All right, Sarah, you were going to tell me about Wheel of Time.
Yeah. So I did finally finish The Gathering Storm, which is book 12 of Wheel of Time. It's the first one that Brandon Sanderson has had a hand in writing. And I enjoyed it overall. I'm really, really invested in Egwene's storyline. Like, she's great. I love it. I'm not the hugest fan of the way that Sanderson will just like change POV characters in the middle of a chapter. Like, it's not in the middle of a scene or anything like that, but it like Robert Jordan kept each chapter strictly to one point of view character, except for the prologue. So it had a rhythm to it that is just, this is different. And I just have to get used to it.
Now, when we say point of view character, is this just who we're focusing on, or is it actually first person perspective?
No, it's just who we're focusing on. It's all written in third person.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So there's that. And then I also think that Sanderson really just does not know how to write Matt, who is one of like the main male characters. There's a scene on page 560 where Matt is making up backstories for some of his men before they go into like a town. And it just struck me as being so dramatically out of character. It was really jarring. I think I texted the friend who got me to read this and was like, what the fuck is up with this scene? It just, this is not Matt at all. I was really happy though, because for most of this book, Rand, who is the main character, has been just insisting that he be hard and like unemotional, and it made for really unpleasant reading. And he finally got over that at the very end of the book. So I think the next two books are going to be much easier to read, especially as they focus more on him as the story draws to a close.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad you are looking forward to the next book then.
Yeah, I'm going to start that in the short amount of time we have before I have to start reading books for the next episode.
So you have 2 Wheel of Time books left?
I have 2 Wheel of Time books left. It feels like that Titanic gif. You know, it's been 84 years.
It sounds like you're going to finish them in a year, maybe?
I expect so.
Well, that's exciting.
Yeah.
I'm glad we haven't derailed your schedule too much.
Not completely. I would probably be already done with it if it weren't for the podcast. So you have derailed it just a little bit.
Yeah, but that's an acceptable amount.
So the first book that we'll be discussing today is Red Harvest Moon by Miles Hurt. And we were actually offered a review copy of this book way back in March. So thanks, and sorry it's taken so long.
I really loved reading this book. I am also a person who loves Vin Diesel movies, and I feel like that overlap is relevant.
I enjoyed reading this book. I really liked the premise and I liked the fight scenes, but I did want Hurt to expand a little bit upon the motivations and like the emotional responses of the characters. They felt a little one-dimensional, and I thought that there was room for them to be, well, like I said, expanded upon. I
agree. I think the only character we really see, well, I guess there's 2. There's the main character, Ren.
Yeah.
And we actually get some flashbacks for like earlier in his life.
But with those, I would have liked them to have more impact on, they felt a little disjointed still. Like, I liked that we were getting the flashbacks.
I think they were mostly expository to explain to the reader why he is the way he is, because he has a lot of, well, he's a bandit, right? And so how did he become a bandit, and how did his life take this path? So that it sort of explores that. And we see a little bit of Droon's motivations. He's a woodsman, a hunter that they sort of run into, they being Ren and Crimp, the bandit duo. But other than that, most of the characters are pretty surface level, which is why this is a great action movie.
It would be a perfect action movie. I mean, you mentioned Vin Diesel, and I think it would make for a great Vin Diesel movie.
I think the reason why I latch onto Vin Diesel in particular is because I also, while reading this book, wanted to play this D&D campaign. Something about the way the characters have like a couple of different options to navigate the hurdles in front of them, and the way they are discussing which path they want to take and the pros and cons felt so much like sitting at a table and discussing, with your friends, like, okay, how do we want to do this? And like, I just think this would make an incredible, I used the phrase one shot. You corrected me earlier. I mean, like, fairly self-contained short running campaign.
Something that only takes a month or so and not, years and years.
Yeah, exactly. That's a one shot, right?
Basically.
But this would be so good, partially because I loved the setting. Oh my god. I guess the monsters and the setting are not technically the same thing, but they're kind of. That's what I mean.
They're related.
The ghouls in this book are so cool.
They were delightfully creepy.
Oh, they're horrifying.
And I loved how they weren't just like your stereotypical zombie. Like, they had character and motivations themselves. They weren't just mindless.
No, yeah. And I also love how there are different types of ghouls. The main villain is Krond, I think is his name.
Yeah.
He's a 7 foot tall, terrifying, uses a butcher cleaver as a weapon, which like straight out of every video game nightmare I've ever had. But he's also an extremely intelligent and a tactician, one of the generals of the army. So you get to see sort of like ghouls are much more complex than zombies often are as a monster. And I really loved that.
Yeah.
And also the descriptions of them eating people was
worst. It was gory. It was gory.
By which I mean the best. Yeah.
There is a scene, I don't know if this is a spoiler or not, if I don't say any names. There's a scene where a character has an eye injury, and in order to heal it, he gets his eye gouged out with a spoon.
Oh, yeah.
which was incredibly unpleasant, but in a satisfying way.
No, I just like the adventure adrenaline in this book was a top notch. I felt like I wanted to be eating popcorn the entire time.
I think you're spot on with saying that it should be a movie or a D&D campaign.
Yes, or both of them.
Or both of them.
Fine too.
Yeah. Because in a movie, you don't need really any of the character development that I wish had been in the book. Because you have a very limited amount of time. And with a D&D campaign, like, you as the player can have that room to grow.
It gives the players space to, play in the world and develop their own relationships with NPCs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so important question.
Mm-hmm.
If this was a Vin Diesel movie, who would Vin Diesel play?
I mean, it's got to be Ren, right? He's the main character.
I think Vin Diesel would be perfect as Droon, the woodsman.
Yeah, maybe this is because I have Riddick, his character from Pitch Black, so embedded in my psyche. But that is definitely like an outlaw who ends up doing good guy stuff, even though he's a bad guy. And so I feel like that fits with Ren really well. Is that a spoiler? I don't think that's a spoiler.
I don't think we know that Ren is the main character.
Yeah, so okay.
He has to be present throughout all of the book.
She's like, Vin has that anti-hero thing going. It works really well.
He also has that like big gruff heart of gold thing that Droon has.
That's true. I did not picture Ren being nearly as built as Vin Diesel is.
No, I think Ren is described as physically kind of weak, isn't he? Like he's a good shot, but he can't climb up those cliffs, for example.
Right. I thought that was a dexterity issue.
Well,
Sorry,
okay.
now I'm using D&D words.
I mean, and to be fair, I don't think Droon has. I think Droon has trouble climbing the cliff too. So
yeah. Although in The Last Witch Hunter, in the sort of prologue of that movie, Vin Diesel does have like a big old Viking beard and hair situation going on, which would be like that fits perfectly with my mental image for Droon. So that would be very good. Oh,
how about we just have two Vin Diesels and he plays both characters?
Well, what if he played Krond?
Yes.
I think he would be actually,
yes.
I take it all. It's hard for me to admit that Vin Diesel should play a villain because I'm sorry, but I think that would actually be amazing.
I think he would bring a lot of pathos to Krond.
Yeah.
Like, he would be so good.
So what you're saying is, through the magic of green screen, we're going to have Vin Diesel play every character.
Yes. I think Vin Diesel should just play every character from Ren to Krond to Crimp to the villagers. It's just Vin Diesel.
Oh my God. But then he could also play the Reeve, who is sort of I was going to say mayor, but obviously not an elected official and kind of a slimy guy. And now I just want to see this sort of magnum opus acting opportunity for Vin to like show his chops. He would have more lines than just "I am Groot," you know?
Mm-hmm. I would watch that movie. I'd watch that movie a lot.
Okay, so other than imagining Vin Diesel as every character, why should you read this book?
You should read it if you want a high adrenaline action adventure story with really cool and pretty complex and scary monsters.
Definitely. I think that the monsters are really what takes it from popcorn action movie to like very engaging book.
Yeah.
Zombies with like emotions is a situation.
Mm-hmm.
That was I have to say I was a little disappointed that the other book that's out is the prologue, because I cannot wait to read the sequel. I need more of this crazy zombie kingdom thing. I want to know what happens. Mostly I just want to read more about these ghouls and what their deal is.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the scope of Red Harvest Moon in that it was more self-contained than your typical story. Like, it wasn't about saving the world, but at the same time, I hope that the scope gets expanded in the sequel because I do want to see more of the wider world.
That's true. That was my note, but that's okay. We can share. I do get kind of tired of the entire universe is at stake plots. I really like it when it gets pulled back. And this is, this book is dealing with one village, basically, that's being threatened by this particular group of ghouls. And the whole thing takes place over just a day or two, I think.
Yeah, it's a very short timeline.
And so there really is the opportunity there to get into this action. We've used the word action a lot, but we're not wrong. It's very good.
Well, I just think that like if you have a series, you can slowly expand. So like the next book could take place in maybe the country or like not country, but like towns around. And then eventually it pulls back to encompass the country and the war with the ghouls. And just that slow progression of intensity would be really interesting. And
that would be great because we would have started on such a microscopic level. The whole town is not microscopic, but you get me. So then when we get to these higher stakes, larger stories, I would already be so invested in all of the characters and all of these places. I think that would be fantastic. I was going to say, I was the one who said I loved this smaller scope, but I'm also the one who's like, but give me the war. So
I just think it works really well if you start small and then go big.
yeah, instead of starting with saving the universe, I agree.
Yeah, because you have time to, like you said, get invested in the characters and the stakes, and then you find yourself really, I don't want to say invested again.
But you can jump straight to the good stuff because we will have these other books. We will. I assume it says it's a series, so I assume there's more on the way. I don't know.
I hope so.
I hope so. Like, yeah. That's actually something else I really liked about this book. Obviously the main character is Ren, but it also has some scenes that follow Krond, which I really enjoyed. Like I said, the ghouls were some of my favorites. I loved it. I really can't wait to see what comes next. All right, Sarah, but who would Vin Diesel play in Gideon the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir?
Now there is a question.
Also everybody?
Also everybody. I think so. He would be a great teacher.
Oh shit, yeah.
Yeah.
He's also of an age where playing the sagely, not father figure, but the Gandalf.
Like a mentor. Yeah. A mentor of sorts.
It would fit. I don't know.
It would work really well. I'm just saying, if there's a movie, he should play teacher.
Honestly, name one story that wouldn't be made better by having Vin Diesel in it somewhere. The Avengers knew what they were doing. Why do you think those movies are so good?
It's true. I don't think I can.
I guess that was Guardians of the Galaxy. Whatever. It doesn't matter.
Marvel.
Yeah.
Anyway, before we get any further with this Vin Diesel talk, as you may have gathered, we read Gideon the Ninth, and a big thank you to Bender, that's at Jack Claver on Twitter, and Dan Fitzgerald at Dan Fitzwrites for suggesting that we read this book on the podcast. It's actually been on my radar for a number of years, and I just somehow never got around to reading it. And I was going to read it just personally, but then we decided to add it to the calendar. And that means that it probably got read a lot sooner than I would have otherwise.
I mean, you sent me the description, and how could I not?
Yeah.
What is it? Should I just read the quote on the front of the book?
Yeah. I mean, I think what I probably sent you was lesbian necromancers in space.
Yeah. Because
that is how I found, when I was looking for this book before it was recommended that we read it for the podcast, I was looking for the title, and I found the title by Googling that. So that was literally my search phrase.
It's a pretty horny book.
It is a pretty horny book.
But in a really fun, non-aggressive way. There's not a lot of heaving bosoms over spilling on bodice tops, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I think non-aggressive is what it is. The traits that the main character is appreciating are all fairly understated. She has soft hands and she smiled at me, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then it's also a lot of her emotional reactions to these cute ladies paying attention to her, which is, I think, a lot easier for anyone to identify with, instead of going, oh, someone's getting objectified. It's, oh, I've felt butterflies in my stomach before. I know what that's like.
Yes, exactly. It's really funny too that all of the men are described in such an unflattering light when they first appear on the page, especially when you compare it to the descriptions of the women. It just made me laugh. There's a description of a rather sulky young man with an air of hair gel and filigree, or he had upsetting biceps. He didn't look healthy. He looked like a collection of lemons in a sack.
Okay, but both of those guys were in my college courses.
I mean, but it's so accurate. He gave the impression of being the guy fun sought out for death. Up close, he was gaunt and ordinary looking. He had the eyes of a very beautiful person trapped in resting bitch face. Those are two different people, but also people that, were in our college classes.
But it is that just sort of unsympathetic description versus the women who are not always described as, they're not all stunningly gorgeous, but they're so clearly being seen through the eyes of a woman who loves women And I actually thought that that narration was so strong, even though this book was in the third person. That was absolutely Gideon speaking, right?
Yeah. Gideon had a very strong voice in this, which I enjoyed, but at the same time, some of the use of modern slang, it definitely added to the tone of the book, but I also simultaneously found it a little jarring in a way that I'm not sure I can articulate. Like hearing someone be called salty or like the worst or hangry or legit just say it was weird to read that in a book.
I loved that. I like slang. I love anachronisms. That worked really well for me. The part of the prose that bothered me was in the beginning. Some of the sentence structures are just trying way too hard to be atypical.
And that didn't bother me because it felt appropriately ossified. Like it helped set the tone of the worlds.
But the rest of the book is so strong with Gideon's voice that was just stuck out like a sore thumb. Like, I know you can switch the object in the subject in a sentence, but you should have a good reason to do it, not just because you can.
I mean, it sounded good. It worked for me.
Nah, see, they didn't flow. They felt like I read poetry, okay? I'm not unaccustomed.
I read poetry too.
Right. But my point is I was defending myself by saying I don't hate all atypical like sentence structures. But they should have a rhythm to them. There should be a reason you're putting the words in that order, not just to prove that you know grammar.
I thought that it had a rhythm.
I disagree.
I think, yet again, this is something that we will just have to agree to disagree about.
Well, and once I got to the action, the beginning of the book does have some chunks of description that after I went back and read them for the fourth time because I kept glazing over because the sentences were so unnecessary.
They were not unnecessary.
Once I finally absorbed that content and was like, okay, this is the world, great, and got to the action, then I was fine. I got into the story, it was all right. I was moving at a much quicker pace, and Gideon's voice got stronger, and we started hearing descriptions of men like that, and it was hilarious, and it worked a lot better, I think. But you just I had to push through the beginning.
I thought it all worked really well together, just as a whole.
Except for the slang.
The slang, it's not that the slang I disliked, because I do think that it helped set Gideon's voice, and it worked for her. It just also brought me out of the story a little bit. But I didn't dislike it. I'm not sure I entirely liked it either.
All right. There was one use of slang that you did like.
Yes, there was one use of slang that I liked, and I tweeted about this too, but I have never heard anyone but my father use the word pill, as in, like, don't be a pill or what a pill. And it was used twice in Gideon. My father apparently got it from our grandmother, but I don't think I've heard anyone else in the family say don't be a pill.
I hear it all the time.
Really?
Yeah, you call me a pill quite often.
Yeah, okay, but so you hear it from me. That doesn't count. But like, does your mother use it?
No, it's just you.
Because I got it from my father, but it's funny because like our parents had the same parents.
Right.
We have the same grandparents. Why is my father the only one in the family who uses don't be a pill?
Maybe he has to deal with pills more often than everyone else.
I resent that implication.
You have a deeply philosophical question in our list of conversation points, and I don't know if we're going to cover it, but I do think it should be addressed.
So my question that developed over the course of reading this book is, can a woman be a himbo? Because Gideon is definitely a himbo and not a bimbo, which the internet offers up as the female equivalent, but they are totally different in meaning.
No, they're not the same at all. And that's a topic that has bothered me for a little while, just in concept, like how they are, theoretically equivalent, but not at all the same thing.
But like Gideon is totally a himbo. There's a quote where she and Harrow, who is her necromancer, are fighting a big necromantic construct, and her brain had only seen the one thing, and her palms were damp with the sweat that came when you were both scared and dying of anticipation. So she said, the arms kind of looked like swords. I want to fight it. Which, like, if that is not the definition of himbo, I don't know what is.
Well, I think you described it really well. Himbos are characters who are focused on physicality.
It's not that himbos don't think, it's just that they think with their body, whereas a bimbo is just an airhead who doesn't think at all.
Right. And she doesn't have physical prowess. She's just pretty.
Yeah.
Whereas a himbo is capable with his body and also pretty.
There's also the kind of unspoken addition of with the heart of gold when you discuss a himbo, and that is not present in the definition of bimbo at all.
No, I have never heard the word himbo not used lovingly.
It's often a term of endearment.
Yeah. I've always ever heard it used that way.
Yeah.
Also, never for a real person, for the record. That's something I've only ever heard used to describe fictional characters. But I don't think anyone in the history of ever, unless you have a fetish, has used the word bimbo as a compliment.
I think you're right about that.
And I do not begin to have the background to dig into that, but wow, there sure is something there.
Yeah, there sure is something there.
In conclusion, himbo should be gender neutral and Gideon is one.
Yes.
So we sort of introduced the concept of this book by using the quote on the front cover, which is lesbian necromancers in space, which is pretty good. But usually we try to give a little bit more context than that. So should we just give like a couple sentence top level description, talk about why you should read this book? Although I feel like if you've been listening for the last 10 minutes, you already know.
Yeah. So high level summary is Gideon wants to get off of her planet, and Harrow says that Harrow is essentially the ruler of her planet.
Can I take a step back, even higher level?
Please do. I'm not good at summaries.
It's all right.
This is why you don't make me do them.
Basic premise of the book is that this takes place in a world, universe, galaxy, whatever, where necromancy, first of all, is either extremely common or extremely common in the ruling class. It's unclear. We don't really see any commoners in this whole book, except for Gideon. And there are 9 houses. The first house is the undead emperor, the emperor who's been risen again. The rest of them are all of various levels of political force. The 9th house, as you may have figured out that Gideon the Ninth is from, is sort of the weird, creepy, culty one, which for a society of necromancers is saying something. And Gideon is an indentured servant to this house and wants nothing more than to get away from it forever. That's the beginning.
That's a much more in-depth description than mine.
Well, that's all stuff you find out in the first chapter, if not page, right?
Oh, yeah.
That's the premise of the book.
Yeah.
And then there's lesbian necromancer shenanigans, and that's all you really need to know.
Also murder mysteries.
Right. So Gideon ends up representing the 9th house with Harrow, who is the reverend daughter. She is the heiress of the 9th house. The two of them go to some weird, like, survivor game show. It's not a game show. It's a competition to become a demigod, basically, because the emperor was like, hey, everyone, send some representatives. If you make it, you'll be a new demigod for me. And obviously, all of these politicos are like, hell yeah.
And then they all start dying.
Because turns out the competition is a little harsher than Survivor. Okay, Sarah, why should you read this book?
I'm going to sound like a broken record when I say lesbian necromancers in space, but lesbian necromancers in space.
Look. Ladies are real nice, and watching them do scary, creepy magic is also real nice.
There is that. But also, Gideon has such a strong, funny voice that it was just a pleasure to read.
The mystery aspect of it, I was not expecting. That was a really pleasant surprise.
I didn't know anything about this book except that it was lesbian necromancers in space. So I was very surprised when we got to the mystery bits.
I wouldn't call it a gothic palace in space. That's technically the quote from the front of the book. That's because I have opinions on the definition of gothic. If you mean creepy with a lot of bones, okay, yes. But there's no incesty family, so that's not gothic. Sorry.
Well, we don't know that.
That's true. Okay, fair. Hey, spoilers.
To avoid spoilers for Gideon the Ninth, skip to 55:35.
Okay, so now that we're in the spoiler section, can I just say that even though Gideon the Ninth is about necromancers, I wasn't actually expecting so much character death, because there are a lot of people who die.
Yeah. You think of necromancers as dealing with things that have previously died, not murdering or getting murdered.
Yeah, I was surprised at the murder mystery aspect of it. Enjoyably surprised.
Yeah.
Surprised.
The reveal at the end, where we discover that Dulcinea is not who she said she was, I did not see coming from, I mean, she was suspicious, but
yeah,
I didn't think that she was secretly a demigod the whole time.
I really enjoyed it because even though it's increasingly obvious as the book moves along that both Dulcinea and
Ianthe?
Yeah, are not exactly what they seem. Like, Ianthe presents herself as the shadow of her sister, and Dulcinea, a dying necromancer. But I was still surprised by the revelations at the end of the book.
I felt those two were very different, just because it was so obvious that Ianthe didn't consider herself the shadow of her sister.
But they're still, yes, they're different. I agree that they're different, but I was still surprised at what was revealed.
Oh, yes.
That's my point.
Ianthe being that as cutthroat as she ended up being was not where I thought it was going necessarily.
I thought she was going to be the big bad murdering everyone, actually.
I mean, she kind of is. She starts.
She murders someone. Yeah. But I thought that she was going to be the overarching villain and not Dulcinea.
So I am really glad that Dulcinea ended up being an ancient demigod, because there is a lot of descriptions of her suddenly seem like, oh, she's 25, she's so old. Gosh, so many years on that brow. And I'm like, okay, slow your roll, Gideon. I get that you're 18, but it's a little unnecessary. And then we find out that's because she is an ancient being, and that's why she appeared to be so old. And I was like, okay, now I'm fine with it. Like, I thought harping on how old she was funny, considering the age range of the other characters, but I'm glad that it had something else going on.
Okay, but also, like, when you were 18, maybe it's just me, but, like, when you're 18, you do think 25 is pretty old.
Right. And, like, it was just some things in this book felt like Gideon's voice, and some things in this book felt like the narrator. And I can't necessarily delineate.
I actually didn't find the descriptions of, like, Gideon thinking Dulcinea was that old very excessive, because Dulcinea is dying of a super horrible cancerous illness. Like, yeah, she's gonna look old and wasted because she's literally dying.
Yeah, it didn't bother me. It just, the combination of she's 25, oh man, look at the wrinkles around her eyes.
Yeah, but she's dying.
But it was never described because she has a terminal illness. It was described because she is terminally an old hag.
No, the implication to me was that because she has a terminal illness, she's aged beyond her 25 years.
Okay, that's not how that read to me, but that's all right. It also didn't actually bother me that much. It was mostly funny. It just, because it came up so much, I was
You
like,
noticed it.
yeah. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, like I get it. Like, come on, like move on. I get it. But then there was a reason, so the number of times it came up was,
It had a payoff.
yeah, exactly. It wasn't, why are you so stuck on this? It was, I get it now.
I did read it differently, but I understand what you're saying.
It was funny. It was just happened so much. I was like, where are you going with this? And I figured it out, or was told very bluntly. I didn't figure shit out.
No, I was not expecting that particular reveal about Dulcinea.
I really liked the flirting between Dulcinea and Gideon through the book, especially as a counterpoint between Gideon and Harrow. With Dulcinea, it's almost that summer camp romance vibe. Like, we're gonna both put our hands on the armrest and touch pinkies and like make eyes at each other. You know, it's like, it's just so sweet and harmless, because it's going nowhere.
Until Dulcinea turns out to be, a demigoddess intent on killing everyone.
That doesn't have anything to do with their flirting. I'm talking purely about their relationship dynamics. But then you get Gideon and Harrow, who have a completely antagonistic relationship, have done everything in their power to make the other one miserable, and it not in a funny, I put a frog in your bed way. Like, Harrow went out of her way to make sure Gideon could never leave her family's like service. As far as going through, not technically illegal, but finding weird legal loopholes to keep her indentured, and turn the heat off in her room so that she would almost freeze to death for weeks at a time. Like, this is not harmless pranks. This is torture. Like, that is.
Are you saying it's not love?
No. But we see them being forced to team up, and their relationship grows. And I was on board with all of that. That was great. It happened pretty slow. The tension, like, ratchets up extremely over time. Definitely a slow burn there. But then it feels like once they have one heart-to-heart, and they're like, we've been in love the whole time. It's like, no, you haven't. What is this? Don't rewrite all of the struggle you went through to get here. It makes the ending, like, it sapped all of the meaningfulness. Ooh, that's not a word.
I mean, it's a word if you say it's a word.
It sapped all of the emotional payoff from the ending for me, because I was so annoyed with the way they handled it. They being Gideon and Harrow talking about their relationship.
It is also a word. It's in Merriam-Webster dictionary.
All right. Meaningfulness and Fergalicious.
And I actually disagree with you there. I mean, this has been an episode for disagreement, or at least a book for disagreement, but I feel like they've been orbiting each other for their entire lives. They're now
not through choice. Like, Gideon was a slave.
But like she says that when she was younger, she just wanted Harrow's attention on her. Like,
because Harrow was literally the only other person.
Okay, so it's Stockholm Syndrome.
Yeah.
Fine. I won't argue too much, but they have been orbiting each other like their entire lives, whether out of genuine choice or not. Like, they do have strong feelings for each other. Now they're on this planet by themselves without anyone else they can trust besides each other. Like,
but they can't even trust each other. Which
they're two dramatic teenagers. Like, of course they're gonna make over the top confessions of love.
They continue betraying each other until the very end, which is fine. Like I said, enemies to lovers, like, it's cool, I get it. But it's the way that they act as if it had always been this way, instead of, wow, crazy how far we've come, like, really put me off.
I didn't feel like that at all.
No, I am not exaggerating when I say it completely ruined the ending for me.
No.
From a plot perspective, I love that Gideon sacrificed herself kind of for the hell of it. It fit with her character very well. But I really wish her last line hadn't been, everything about me is about you, or some shit like that. Like, it was just not. Like, come on, Gideon, you're funnier than that.
It worked for me.
Mm-mm.
It worked for me very well.
Mm.
So, again, agree to disagree here.
But it, like, you're gonna have to tell me what happens in the next book, because I am done with this series. Like, I'm not reading a single word about Harrow.
I will let you know what happens in Harrow the Ninth. If I had Harrow the Ninth last night when I finished reading Gideon, I would have started Harrow. But I did not have Harrow the Ninth because I did not think ahead. I've also been told that it's a very different book from Gideon.
Well, so speaking of scope, Gideon the Ninth is all about this one trial, which was really fun, and I loved it, and turned out it was a murder mystery, and also just general mystery of what the hell is going on in this spooky house. But it feels like it's headed, at the end, we find out that they were doing this contest to become a demigod because there's a war that's been going on and all the other ones are dead.
Well, that was implied throughout, like, the book. That wasn't a surprise.
Not all of them. There's like a line that says, even though they're immortal doesn't mean they can't die. And that's like it. So it implies that some of them need to be replaced. I don't think the characters knew that all of them were gone.
But to me, it was evident enough that, like, they needed more manpower. Whether or not all of the lictors were dead, that's kind of irrelevant. There was a war going on and they needed more.
Okay, sure. That was fine. Hey, what was Dulcinia's deal anyway? Not Dulcinea, the lector, the demigod that she actually was.
She hated the emperor because she didn't want to live forever after all this time, or something like that. Also, can I just say that for the majority of this book, I thought that the emperor was either going to be a lie or dead. I
definitely didn't think he was just going to be a dude. That was wild.
Yeah. I didn't think the emperor was actually going to, like, come into play at all.
So here's his description. Cytherea, who was the demigoddess who was pretending to be Dulcinea, was my fault, he said. She was the very best of all of us, the most loyal, the most humane, the most resilient, the one with the most capacity for kindness. I made her live 10,000 years in pain because I was selfish and she let me. Okay, I guess.
I mean,
So she goes about and, like, murders all of these people so that she can kill the emperor? Like, what was her goal? Was she just trying to fuck shit up?
I think she was just trying to fuck shit up. Like she lived these 10,000 years, got incredibly bitter, and just wanted to ruin things for the emperor.
And so she torments all of these people because they wanted to be the new favorites.
She torments all these people because that's going to hurt the emperor. Like, the emperor doesn't want these people tormented. He wants them to come to the decision to, like, the measured and knowledgeable decision to become demigods, like, of their own accord. He doesn't want them to be pressured into it because someone is killing them all.
All right. I guess that
it's like, how can she make things what's the worst she can do to the emperor? Well, she's going to do it, and it's ruin all of his plans and make these people hurt.
All right. I didn't totally get that. I guess that's the only explanation. So I guess I got it while I was reading it. But I felt like she has a line of dialogue where she was like, "This was my plan all along, you fools." And I was like, wait, what was? You had a plan? What?
I mean, I'm pretty sure, and I don't have the specific scene or the specific quote, but I'm pretty sure that she says basically just that.
Okay.
That she wanted to make the emperor hurt.
To me, her confession read more like a murder plot, and so I thought there was something more going on. Like, she also had this secret dagger that she was going to use for an assassination attempt. But then that didn't get brought up ever again, so I was like, clearly I misread what her plans were.
Yeah, I mean, she says, I have come back home to kill the emperor and burn his houses, is her kind of like her introduction to Cytherea as Cytherea and not Cytherea as Dulcinea.
All right. I mean, she did a good job, so okay.
She was moderately effective. She didn't kill everyone. She killed a lot of people.
While I was reading that, I just felt like I was missing something. That's all. That was enough?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that was enough for me.
I did like all of the action in this book.
The action was good. And I liked all of the bones.
Yeah.
Unsurprising, given that it's me and I am a bone person, but...
Well, and if you look at it as a murder mystery, so each house sent 2 people to this contest, right? There was the necromancer and the cavalier, or the himbo, if you will.
The necromancer and the sword person.
Yeah, stabby boy. Although I am using boy as a gender neutral term there, which is probably not helpful to literally anyone. It was really fun sort of going through this. And as you said, you can't trust anybody. But of course they do end up teaming up with people and sort of going through and seeing the different personalities and motivations in the different houses and the different relationship dynamics between all of these pairs was really, really fun.
Mm-hmm.
Like each pair had a different relationship with each other, and just watching how this necromancer cavalier team can play out in 8 different ways was great. It was great. There was a married couple that was cute as hell. There was the creepy, I guess they were technically related, but that was only because
I kind of thought the implication was that one of them was a clone. I might be wrong about that, but like...
I don't think he was a clone because he said that he was raised with a bunch of different brothers so that the one who was a genetic match would be the one chosen.
Yeah.
And so I thought they just churned through children trying to until they got like a pair that worked so that one could suck the life force out of the other, which is horrifying.
I guess I don't necessarily mean clone. I mean like genetically engineered somehow.
Maybe.
That could, I think that's just my reading and not anything in the text.
Genetically engineered, sure, but not in a scientific way, in a let's just breed a bunch and then choose for the best traits way, which is still technically genetic engineering. So
that's true.
He is a GMO cavalier.
I was just sad that the people I liked most died first.
Weren't they? Oh, they were, well, because they were the sweethearts, the sweetie.
They were the
married couple who were just like nice to everyone.
Which is a concept in the world of Gideon the Ninth.
Right. Nice to everyone, including each other, which is, I guess...
also a concept?
That's not fair. A lot of the Cavalier Necromancer pairs did really have an us against the world mentality.
Yeah.
But not always in a healthy way, whereas... was it?
I think that there was a lot of codependency there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the system is set up for that, right?
Right.
They're trying to encourage one half of this team to willingly sacrifice themselves. I don't think you're setting up a healthy relationship for that.
You may have a point there.
Sarah, do you want to wrap up our discussion of this with one of our favorite quotes from the book?
I can do that. Then we're all dead, Nav, but let's bring hell first, said Harrow. Gideon looked over her shoulder at her and caught the Reverend daughter's smile. There was blood sweat coming out of her left ear, but her smile was long and sweet and beautiful. Gideon found herself smiling back so hard her mouth hurt. Her adept said, I'll keep it off you. Nav, show them what the ninth house does. Gideon lifted her sword. We do bones, motherfucker.
I feel like, in case anyone is listening to this and has not read the book, Nav and Gideon are the same person. And also, Harrow and the Reverend's daughter and the reverend daughter, excuse me, and the adept are all the same person. There were only 2 people in that scene. There were a lot of titles.
I find it interesting that you say Harrow and not Harrow.
Like harrowing.
Harrowing.
Yeah, I guess I do either way. And not really stick to one or the other. Hollow.
Hallow.
But that's with an O.
Yeah, if it's an A, I think Hallow.
Well, wait, what's her full name?
Harrowhawk.
Oh, that's why. Harrowhawk. I want those to be the same sound.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. Harrowhack. Well, we would have had a really nice ending, but I think we gotta end on Harrowhack now. I have a Words Are Weird that is completely directed at whoever writes the electronic signs for the First Avenue Bridge in Seattle.
Tell us about your Words Are Weird, Lily.
Excuse me, sir, but the bridge is closed is not the same thing as the bridge is up. It took me an extra 30 minutes to get into the city the other day because I was driving up to the First Avenue Bridge and I was like, all right, gonna go into Seattle. This is normal. I needed to get a book for this podcast because I did curbside pickup because I procrastinate and couldn't wait for it to be delivered. And their big old sign said, the bridge is closed. So I said to myself, gosh, I better find some other way to get into Seattle because the bridge is closed. That means you can't use it.
That is what that implies.
Turns out the bridge was up, which is completely different. That just means there's, you got to wait for a couple minutes for it to go back down. That's not find a new route. Why would you ever say closed? Would you mean up? Those are not the same thing.
They're not the same thing. And they're not even, like, closed is not even accurate if it's just up.
Right?
Like, it's not like you can somehow interpret the bridge is closed as being the bridge is up. It's just they're 2 different states of being.
Yeah. And closed implies some level of permanence. Well, I should say the West Seattle Bridge is closed. Can't drive on that at all. I know I am talking a lot about Seattle bridges, but it's fine. You get it. West Seattle Bridge is closed. Can't drive on it. Closed. Like, that's the words everyone's been using. First Avenue Bridge is closed. Uh-oh. Now what? Turns out that was a lie.
I'm sorry that you had to go to such pains to get a book for this podcast.
Yeah, I mean, I got there eventually.
On the other hand, it means that we had something to add to Words Are Weird this episode.
That's true.
So you were taking one for the team.
I could have seen that sign and been just as annoyed and not taken an exit I didn't actually want to take and then gotten a little bit lost and then tried to follow detour signs and then turn the wrong way and then eventually find myself on the First Avenue Bridge, which is what I was going to do originally. But like half an hour later.
That sounds like an ordeal.
It was a whole thing. It's over now. And now I'll never believe that sign again. There's going to be a day where the bridge is closed. And if I go past the last exit, I'll just be stuck on the bridge forever. But I'll do it. I'll drive through the barrier because it's like, well, that sign's not right.
That sounds like a Magnus Archives episode.
I still haven't started that.
I haven't read anything for a while because I've been too busy reading podcast stuff.
Well, hopefully one of our listeners works for the freeway job department. I'm sure that's a thing, right? Someone has to write for that sign, okay?
We can write an angry letter to whoever is in charge and tell them, sir, your signage is wrong.
This is inaccurate. No, I'll just send them a link to this episode, and then they get to listen to all of our lesbian necromancer stuff.
I mean, that also gets us an extra listen, so I say do it.
Somehow I don't think that's how that would pan out.
You know, you're probably right.
I usually am.
Disagree there.
I mean, we just spoke for like 10 minutes about how I thought the bridge was closed, so yeah, clearly not always. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Fiction Fans.
Come disagree with us. We're on Twitter and Instagram at FictionFansPod. You can also email us at fictionfanspod@gmail.com.
If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts, and follow us wherever your podcasts live.
Thanks again for listening, and may your villains always be defeated. Bye.
Bye. Lovely.
Delightful.